best of them, not the worst parts, the best parts. This is the best of the rest.
Hello, and that cat is playing chopsticks with chopsticks. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at superhero movies that were poorly received upon release, but only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's sometimes a challenge, but always a good time, and this week, we are talking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my fully grown civilian human co-host, Andrew Williams. Are you ready for this one, Andrew?
I am. It is been a while since I've dived into this one, so let's see how my memory serves it.
Yeah, I mean, you did watch the movie for the episode, right? You did watch it recently. It's fresh on your mind.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that I I watched this movie once when it came out 7 years ago and then haven't touched it since. No, I watched it. I rewatched it, yeah, very recently.
So did you see this in theaters then?
I did, actually. I remember going because there was a group of us. It was me and a couple of friends, and we were kind of curious about just how it was going to turn out. I saw the sequel with our good buddy Doug, but we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, in the theater, full price, everything. Way before A-list or Movie Pass. I paid good money.
Well, I did not see this in theaters. Watching it, preparing for this episode, is the first time I watched this movie. Now, Andrew, I would like to tell you that I chose not to see this movie in theaters because I responsibly decided, you know what, that's probably not made for me, and I respectfully declined. I was probably a little bit more harsh than that, having never seen the movie. Just kind of the reputation it garnered before it came out, and some of the trailers. I probably said negative things about this movie in the past without seeing it. I will admit that now on microphone, but I'm trying to be a better person on this #positivity podcast. So going into it, I watched this movie with that lens of let's find the positives. Let's talk about what works in this movie, because there's been a lot of people like former me, like old me, that have certainly trashed this movie. There's plenty of videos of people of a certain age, millennials and Gen Xers that grew up with the Ninja Turtles that never gave this movie a chance, or watched it with the intention of trying to find everything wrong with it that they could. So our goal is the complete opposite. We're approaching this movie and trying to talk about everything that genuinely works. I'm glad that I've finally seen this movie as a huge TMNT fan myself, and Andrew, I'm excited to talk about it.
Sure.
You mentioned the movie came out 7 years ago. Specifically, it's released August 8th, 2014, made on a budget of $125 million. They were fully behind this project, and it paid off. At the box office, it brings in $493 million. It is easily the highest grossing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. Now, the critical reception is not too great. Rotten Tomatoes has it at just 21%. It is low, there's no getting around that, but honestly, it's not that far off from any other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie out there. None of them are critics' darlings, we could say.
No, definitely not. The audience score on this one, I think, is higher, but still only like a 50%. So, I mean, this is not something that was, no one was beating down their doors about TMNT 14. Wasn't anything people were, it made a good amount of money, so it definitely had some hype and had that going for it. It got a sequel, but yeah, it seems in the aftermath there wasn't a lot of positivity going around, but we're here to change that.
Well, let's take a look at the creative team behind this movie. It is written by the writing duo of Josh Applebaum and Andre Nemec. Together, just a few short years before this, they wrote Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which for a long time I called my favorite Mission Impossible movie. I think it's been topped since then, but still a very, very good movie and a franchise that I dearly love. Most of the credits you'll find on various TV shows, but very successful screenwriters nonetheless. A third writer is brought on before production begins by the name of Evan Doherty. Evan is responsible for movies like Snow White and the Huntsman, as well as Divergent. So again, solid credits to their name.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was also, there was a couple of different writing groups that were attached to this at various times. And these guys ended up winning it out. And yeah, I mean, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, for those of you that haven't seen it, rules. So you should definitely check that one out. But yeah, they're brought on board for this, solid track record. So that was definitely, when the movie was getting geared up to start production, I thought, this is nothing but good.
And the director's chair is Jonathan Liebsman. Previous to this, directed such movies as Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, which is the prequel to the reboot, which is perfectly not confusing, as well as Battle Los Angeles, a movie that also did not receive a good critic score, but I will happily go to bat for. I think that movie is all right, Andrew.
Well, that's about as ringing an endorsement as you can ask for.
Good. It's a solid Aaron Eckhart alien movie. I'm not going to tell you it's the greatest alien movie of all time, but I just think it got unfairly beat up a little bit. Full disclosure, I saw it once in theaters, but hey, I had a good time.
Hey, I like Aaron Eckhart. I expected him to blow up a lot bigger than he has.
Why is he not like the biggest movie? Like after The Dark Knight, why is he not like the biggest leading man? I do not understand that.
Like literally, Thank You for Smoking, followed by The Dark Knight. I have no idea how he's not in literally everything now. And instead he's playing like third line in that movie solely with Tom Hanks. And I realize it's Tom Hanks, but like it's Aaron Eckhart, folks. He looks like the greatest man of all time. And so, yeah, I don't get it. But I have not seen Battle Los Angeles, so I will take your recommendation eventually. I have seen another movie he did called Darkness Falls, which was co-written by a guy I semi-know named Joe Harris, who's done some comics too. That was I think that was his first feature film. And he also did that Wrath of the Titans reboot, or rather the sequel to the Clash of the Titans reboot. Again,
so he did the prequel to
a
reboot in one franchise, and the sequel to a reboot
and the sequel to a reboot in another one. Yeah, not at all confusing.
Man, Darkness Falls is a movie I haven't thought about in a long time. I saw that in theaters with my dad, and at one point, both of us were like, wait, this is about the Tooth Fairy? What is this?
Yep, it is a movie that takes some turns. Let's put it that way. It is a very strange one. So an interesting filmography. This was a movie that kind of got unfairly, like, this was Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles movie. That's how everybody kept describing it. Like, this is Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles movie. Michael Bay this, Michael Bay that, Michael Bay this.
We should say, we normally don't really mention producers on a movie because they're normally not the driving creative force. But like you're saying, that stole headlines. It's not technically just produced by Michael Bay, but rather his production company, which he is a co-founder of, called Platinum Dunes.
Right. So he was involved in this to a degree. He made some statements about it. I think that's kind of how he kind of ended up at the forefront of this. Some of the more controversial decisions that we had heard about this movie coming up to it being, to the production starting, Bay was the one kind of saying a lot of this. So I think that kind of made Michael Bay the face of this movie in a very strange way. But he's not on the writing group. He doesn't direct it. He's just a producer. So what his ultimate involvement, I don't really know. But I do remember, and even now, people still call this like the Michael Bay Turtles movies. Like, this is still very much like Michael Bay is attached to this, even literally if all he did was like repeat things that he was hearing. It's still, for a lot of people, Michael Bay's Turtles movie.
I've got the list of all the movies that Platinum Dunes produced before Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Let's run through them. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, the 2003 reboot.
Yes.
The Amityville Horror, the 2005 reboot. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, the aforementioned prequel to the reboot. The Hitcher, another horror movie. The Unborn, another horror movie. Friday the 13th.
The Hitcher also being a remake.
Okay. The Unborn, though, that's an original, a David S. Goyer original.
I believe that's original.
Okay.
Well, as original as David S. Goyer.
Hey, hashtag PP Andrew.
Hashtag PP.
That same year, they released Friday the 13th. Of course, the reboot.
Yes.
A movie called Horseman. which is a psychological thriller, not quite horror. They're branching out a little bit, I think. But then in 2010,
starring Dennis Quaid. So if you want a psychological horror starring Dennis Quaid, go to town, folks.
in 2010, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Of course, reboot. 2013, The Purge, and The Purge Anarchy the following year. So now they're launching an original horror franchise. And then, of course, in 2014, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Also, Ouija the same year, another horror movie. So the point I'm getting at is it... What?
Ouija.
It ends up with an A. What do you mean, Ouija?
It's not an English word.
Ouija. That's pronounced Ouija?
Ouija. Those are Ouija boards.
I'm just going to take your word for it. The point is, they produced almost exclusively horror movies.
With a heavy emphasis for the first several years on reboots / reimaginings. And that was
okay,
actually
so I guess there's a line to be drawn there because this is a bit of a reboot for the franchise.
And it's obviously a different vibe. This is something where we're working on what's meant to be a wide appealing franchise film with a higher budget than they normally work with. All the stuff you mentioned before are much more smaller budgets. I mean, we're talking things that are probably 10 to 15 million at most. So this was really kind of this is really the first blockbuster. We're first probably over $100 million budget film the Platinum Dunes had done. Now, obviously, Michael Bay himself is no stranger to, huge, massive films. But for Platinum Dunes, this was kind of a big jump into something much different. Also, Purge Anarchy rules. I don't know if anybody needs to hear that.
I like how you're looking around the room like someone's going to jump up and defend your statement, Andrew. I haven't seen the Purge films yet. I own them all for some reason, but I will go down that road soon. I'm actually watching a lot of horror movies right now. I'm working my way through the Friday the 13th franchise. I am 5 movies in, so
it's about to get real weird for
not
you.
quite halfway through, but it's been a roller coaster so far. I can't wait to see where this goes.
You have no idea what's coming.
But before we really jump into this, all the positives and things we like, I want to make a point to emphasize how much, I'll just say it, hate from the internet this movie got before a trailer dropped, before a poster dropped, before we knew anything about it. Of course, Michael Bay being involved was a lot of ammo for people, I guess the tactful way to put it. And a phrase that I heard a lot during this time, I heard it some during Michael Bay's Transformers movies, and I think it really reached a new level with this movie, is Michael Bay is ruining my childhood, or more colorful variations of that. And Andrew, I see your face. I know we've talked about it before. You hate this phrase. Do you want, the floor is yours if you want to get the word out on this phrase.
Generally speaking, the problem I have with this phrase is it's wrong for the most part. Like your childhood is not being affected by this. Like you and I love the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. We love it unironically. We're huge fans of it. I'm pretty sure we've seen it in movie theaters, maybe together, if not at least on our own. And like this movie's existence does nothing to that. Like we don't love that movie less because this exists. We don't suddenly not like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because this new movie exists. So it's always been very strange to me that people act like this retroactively like ruins a franchise for somebody. And like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I mean, I will proudly and always watch TMNT 90 anytime I want. I'm not going to go to put that on and suddenly be like, yeah, but Michael Bay produced that really lame reboot in 2004. Not that, I'm calling it that now, but just, the nomenclature of our times, the royal whatever.
Oh,
but
we understand, Andrew. We got it.
It's always just very strange to me. Like, I'm not going to say that the movies are like unsung gems or something. Like, I'm not going to say that you have to enjoy them, but like, dislike them on their own merits. Don't act like it's this wide-reaching temporal anomaly that's somehow shattering the multiverse and ruining this franchise for you. Because it's not.
Well said, Andrew. I think the sentiment that is being expressed with that phrase, as incorrect as it clearly is that a property that they loved as a child is now a adaptation that they don't enjoy. If I'm trying to kind of sum up what people are trying to say by that phrase, and that stigma was attached to this movie, again, before we knew anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a script that leaked with the code name of The Blue Door, and within that script was many departures from the source material, the movies we grew up with, different origins for the Turtles, a reimagining of the property. And again, that was more fuel for people to use that phrase and complain about the internet and make up their mind before the movie comes out. I believe it's a big reason that Evan Doherty was brought on at all to make some changes to that leaked script. So the movie had an uphill battle before it even started. From a certain sect of people, I should say. This movie did make a lot of money. It worked for a lot of people. But
well, and I think you're looking at a very, I mean, it's like with anything. There's going to be a segment that the online, this isn't meant to discourage discourse or anything like that, but the vocal online dissidents rarely tend to be the majority overall. Typically speaking, especially parents that have kids are going to be like, oh, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, I'm going to take like that's the audience that this movie's going for. But this is a kind of movie that, and a kind of franchise, and this is something that I know is a sticking point for some fans, but this is a franchise with a wide scope. It's got a wide reach of fans, got a wide, I mean, there's been 4 or 5 different Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoons that are very clearly aimed at kids. So when there's a movie out, they're going for that 12 and under crowd's parents to be taking them in to see it. And for this one, that definitely appears to be what happened. But yeah, this was a movie that, like, before it ever came out, you knew everything. Like, everybody had already told you that it was just awful and disrespectful. Even people from the original films were speaking on some of the changes. I'm
not even going to repeat the Robbie Wrist quote, the voice of Michelangelo, what he said about this movie.
Yeah, we're not going to say that, but and then some people were supportive. I mean, I know Judith Hoag, who plays April O'Neil in the first film, she apparently was more supportive. And then Kevin Eastman came on board, and I think I won't say whether or not that was calculated by the studio to try and deflect a little bit, but they had a lot of, rightful or not, the studio went into like a weird segment of like damage control, trying to like get the public perception of this film back to positive. It just, an uphill battle is probably putting it nicely.
All that being said, I think we set the stage for the challenges that this movie had coming out. Let's jump into the movie that we actually got. April O'Neil is a reporter for a local news station in New York City who's tired of running fluff pieces and is hungry for a good story. She finds what she's looking for after witnessing mysterious vigilantes break up an attempted theft by a gang known as The Foot. After tracking down the heroes, she learns that they are, in fact, mutated adolescent turtles with ninja training.
Nice.
After April meets the turtles' sensei and father figure Splinter, a mutated rat, she realizes that she met these characters long ago when they were lab experiments for her father's research. Now, the turtles must stop April's father's former partner's plan, which involves using the mutant blood of our heroes to create an antidote for an airborne virus that will be unleashed on New York City by his master, who calls himself Shredder. And that's the story. That's what we have in this movie, Andrew.
The Spaceballs turn there was pretty nice. Gotta give props to that one. But yeah, the plot of this movie is there's a lot going on.
Look, I try to keep
there
this brief.
Is a lot happening.
Well, before we get to the plot and scenes, let's talk about the cast, as we always do, and we're going to start at the top, at the high point, with the best casting and our favorite performance in the movie. Every episode, we'll highlight one person who goes above and beyond what's being asked, and actually elevates the quality of the entire film with their performance, or at least elevates the role that they were given. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, kick us off. Who gets your Mark Strong Award for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
My Mark Strong for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is actually going to go to the greatest actor of all time, William Fichtner, as Eric Sachs. William Fichtner is awesome. If you guys haven't seen Heat, I definitely recommend watching Heat. and then realizing where Nolan stole everything in The Dark Knight from. But
William Fichtner is very high up on the list of actors you don't know their name, but you know their face. I promise you, if you don't right now know who William Fichtner is, Google him, look at his face, think of 10 movies you've seen him in.
You've seen him in even like his his bit part like Quiz Show. I had you watch that. He's got a bit part in Quiz Show all the way through Armageddon, Crash. Everything. You've definitely seen William Fichtner before. But
you mentioned that he's in Heat, and Christopher Nolan was heavily inspired by Heat when made The Dark Knight, and he has one of the most memorable lines in that movie.
Yep.
What's the line, Andrew?
Chris, you tell us the line. It's your movie.
You and your friends are dead. Awesome.
He's literally in that first scene, and that's it. But yeah, William Fichtner's great, but he is in this as a character named Eric Sachs. He's the CEO of Sachs Industries. Now, this character was a little controversial because the original whatever indicated that he was going to be the Shredder. Eric Sachs, Oroku Saki, you see it. There was some stuff happening there, and this was apparently one of the things that they changed in the reshoots or redid in the reshoots, was specifically making it so that Sachs was not the Shredder. He was instead Shredder's adopted son, which makes you ask, how old is Shredder exactly? Because William Fichtner's not exactly young. But I just love William Fichtner. His role here is he's playing this, basically he's the head of this company that's basically used all around New York City for helping with various really unnamed projects, but he's thrown into the middle of a very ridiculous situation, a ridiculous plot, honestly. 4 giant turtles all running around. And he's doing his part, chewing the scenery and having the best time that he can with it. Especially once he starts interacting with the turtles, and especially his kind of final standoff with Megan Fox and Will Arnett's Vern Fenwick. He's just, you need somebody to punch up your movie. You could do a lot worse than getting William Fichtner as part of your supporting cast.
Yeah, and he plays it totally straight. I mean, he's the bad guy, he's the evil CEO, and I don't think he cracks a smile. I mean, he is as menacing as he would be in any other role where he plays an evil businessman. In any other type of movie, in a drama, he'd be playing this the exact same way, I think. And it's interesting to juxtapose that with, CGI turtles flying around fighting and stuff.
Right. He gets a fun little nod to Usagi Yojimbo when he sees the giant turtles for the first time, because he goes most of the movie not having seen these turtles, and he looks at them and he's like, wow, we were going to use rabbits. And because there is a very notable anthropomorphic rabbit that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are known to hang out with from time to time. So I thought that was a fun little nod. But he's running with it, and doesn't come back for the sequel, unfortunately.
His role here, his casting here, reminds me a bit of, you've brought this up on the show before, Andrew, Stephen King's opinion of Jack Nicholson's casting in The Shining. He said it took away a lot of the mystery because he's Jack Nicholson. He's going to go crazy because it's Jack Nicholson. Well, right. William Fichtner is a bad guy. You look at this guy's face and his demeanor, and he's a bad dude. He's technically played some good characters. Let's see, Equilibrium, a movie that I think is pretty fun that I like. You're unsure about him at first, but he ends up being a good guy. So he's done it before, but come on, look at that face. Look at that hair. That's a bad guy. Yeah, you're just waiting
that's
for
a bad guy. He's okay in Armageddon, right? Isn't he? Not a bad guy in Armageddon. The asteroid's the bad guy in Armageddon. But yeah, you really are. It's not a shock when they reveal that William Fichtner is in on the bad guy's plan. And throughout the course of the movie, you just keep finding out more and more awful things about him, like he killed April's father and a whole bunch of other things. But yeah, he's given it his all, and I'm going with somebody, I'm going with William Fichtner.
Solid pick for the Mark Strong Award. You love your villains. I am starting to notice. I looked down your picks for Mark Strong Award. You love a good scenery chewing villain.
It's like Shawn Michaels once said, playing the heel is way more fun.
Very true. For my Mark Strong Award, I thought about this a lot. And it's going to be a little bit unorthodox, I think, for a Mark Strong Award. But in my gut, this is who I've got to give it to. At the risk of sounding like a backwards compliment, Andrew, take a walk with me here. When this movie first came out, I honestly didn't know anything about the voice actors that were cast in this movie. I didn't know about it until I watched the movie this week and did a little bit of research on it. And boy, let me tell you, when I saw that Johnny Knoxville was cast as a voice of a Ninja Turtle, I mean, what's your first thought? Johnny Knoxville's playing a Ninja Turtle. Is he Michelangelo, the party dude? Or maybe he's Raphael, the angry one? No, he's cast as Leonardo. For one, is my favorite Ninja Turtle, and is the calm, level-handed leader of the group. Which I think about Johnny Knoxville's personality and his roles, and I just don't see it. And Andrew, I was preparing myself for something truly heinous, okay? But you know what? It totally works. I think he does a very good job as Leonardo. And for that, Johnny, I apologize for the thoughts I had about you before I actually watched this movie, because I think you did a great job, and you're getting my Mark Strong Award for your role as Leonardo, the voice of Leonardo. We should mention that there's also a motion capture for Leonardo. That would be Pete Plosek. You can share the Mark Strong Award. I'll send you guys each one, but he kind of blew me away as Leonardo. That sounds like hyperbole, but honestly, from what I expected to what we got, so miles better. It's hard to even hear that it's Johnny Knoxville. He's very much playing a character. He could have just easily just talked like Johnny Knoxville, because actors get to do that all the time in their voice roles. They get hired just to be themselves, but he's truly playing a character. He's got this nice gravelly voice, a little Batman-esque, but you definitely take him serious as the leader. He's not cracking a ton of jokes, which you would expect from Johnny Knoxville. I think he's a great Leonardo, and it's just so weird to say. It's still weird right now. I've seen the movie. I've digested this casting. I've gotten used to it. But man, Johnny Knoxville's Leonardo. And you know what? It's pretty dang good. Mark Strong Award winner.
All right, Johnny Knoxville. He's got a Mark Strong Award, and he's about to win the Royal Rumble. How can you go wrong? But
is he in the Royal Rumble this year?
He is, which will have already happened by the time this episode comes out, folks. Oh, I will also spoil for you, he doesn't win it. But no, it is an interesting choice. But yeah, he was one of the only ones that it was him and Splinter, which to be fair is 40% of them, but where the voice was different than the motion capture. Now, Pete Plosek does voice him in the sequel. Johnny Knoxville does not return for that. But he was one of the voices they announced, and I had similar trepidation at his announcement, being like, Johnny Knoxville is as Leonardo? That seems a little odd. But yeah, he does a great job here. He plays it, again, playing it pretty straight, not leaning into you can tell it's Johnny Knoxville. Like, he's not masking his voice, not like Frank Welker or somebody, but he's doing a great performance here. So definitely, I would say a left field pick, but I support it.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. It's good to have your support. Since you mentioned it, let's go ahead and talk about Tony Shalhoub as the voice of Splinter. Of all the voice acting, it really is Johnny Knoxville and Tony Shalhoub are kind of the highlights. The other ones are they're super performers and doing the voice, and they're not nearly as well known as these two. These are the two where they seem to really seek out a character, an actor that could bring the character to life in a specific way. So Tony Shalhoub as Splinter. That's another one that is very strange to me. Splinter is a mutated rat. He doesn't have a race traditionally, a nationality. We often think of him as Japanese, and Tony Shalhoub is not. I'm not saying that they've whitewashed Splinter, because that doesn't really apply to the character, I don't think, at least not in this iteration. But kudos to Tony Shalhoub for not doing the horribly racist, stereotypical Asian accent that is sometimes associated with this character, has even maybe happened in other movies, but we're not here to talk about that. So he plays it straight. He plays it as he's a sensei, he's a master, but he's, again, not getting to the problematic area of his voice performance, and kudos to that.
Yeah, they avoid in several versions. Splinter is the pet rat of somebody from Japan. So I think in that version, the Japanese connections are a little bit more overt. Not that, again, you can necessarily, like, a rat can't necessarily have
It's a weird
dialect. It's a weird line. But in this one, they kind of just avoid that. In fact, Hamato Yoshi, who is in the mentioned and brought up in the 90s films, the live action films from the 90s, he's not used in this script at all. In this one, Splinter is just a rat, an American rat that
New York City rat, baby.
NYC. But yeah, so they avoid
I'm
that
ratting
kind
here.
of thing. Oh, we're already off the rails. But yeah, so they avoid a lot of that. But yeah, so you get Tony Shalhoub, who, again, one of the greatest actors of all time.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember hearing that and just thought it was an odd choice. But yeah, they avoid that kind of whole Japanese backstory of Splinter entirely in this, and just have him learn ninjutsu from a book, which, you know, he's pretty good from learning it from a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think Tony Shalhoub, Danny Woodburn doing the motion capture for this, which is odd because Danny Woodburn is like a notable actor in his own right. So it was a little, he was the
Yeah.
one where like you would have assumed they cast him for the voice, but I can't even imagine his voice as Splinter. It's so strange.
He's a notable actor, and he's a little person, which I watching this movie, I didn't think like Splinter had a much smaller stature than the Turtles.
Yeah.
I'm not sure quite the reasoning for that, but I guess he does a good job. I am not an expert on judging mocap performances,
Right.
but I saw nothing
just-
janky or out of place there, so I assume he did a good
I was
job.
just trying to imagine like big figure from Watchmen voicing Splinter, and it just wasn't coming to me because that's. But yeah, it was and I mean, I have to imagine a lot of the action was, you know, stunt doubles anyway. So, and Danny Woodburn did say in hindsight that he was kind of upset / disappointed that he ended up not being able to provide the voice as well. But yeah, they avoid a lot of the issues and give us some good fight scenes with Splinter too, because the practicality of Splinter in the 90s films didn't really allow for him to do much of anything outside tell the Turtles that he was coming to a conclusion. But it's
his tail
so
in this movie is nuts. It's like Dr. Octopus's tentacle.
It's like it's nuts.
Rounding out the Ninja Turtles, we have Jeremy Howard as Donatello. Again, a mocap performer and the voice. And again, an excellent job. Andrew, I happen to this is your favorite Ninja Turtle, Donatello, yes?
Yes.
Does he do your boy justice, in your opinion?
I think so. Like Jeremy Howard, he's another one that you've probably seen in something. Like he's notably one of the nerds in Galaxy Quest that hangs out with Justin Long. I remember him also from Accepted, also with Justin Long. I'm starting to catch a theme here, but yeah, I think Donatello he's got these weird like contraptions that he wears on his shell all the time. They do like the Turtles are all these. They're much bigger here than they've ever been in the past. Like in the show, they're always portrayed as kind of shorter. In the live action films in the 90s, they're about only as tall as their voice as their suit actors. They're not hyping them up or anything. Here, they're like massive, and not just like tall. They are these boys thick. Like they're not messing around. But Donatello is played. He's a little bit thinner than all the other guys. He's got all these weird tech gadgets all the time.
Well, Andrew, maybe you've heard this. Donatello, he does machines.
I have heard that. And that is made very evident here by having the machines literally on his person.
Yeah, he's got these,
so it
goggles
was a choice.
that magnify things and
right,
very gadgety.
And like he's got these like radar things on his shell that he's wearing. It's like a whole lot of weird gadgets, but still has his bow staff. Gets in the thick of things.
Retractable bow staff, which I thought was pretty cool. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, that's a cool little twist there. But yeah, I think he does a pretty good job here. I in the realm of Donatello performances, I think it holds up.
Not the backhand, another performer we talked about, but a step up from Corey Feldman, in my opinion.
Oh, throwing throwing some fire there, Chris. My God.
sorry, Corey. You're great. I just saw him in Friday the 13th,
Friday the
Part
13th
4.
Held up by many as the high point of the series.
Very strange end of that movie where he makes himself look like Jason. It's a weird one, folks. But
Watch it, folks.
I
It's
like
strange.
Jeremy Howard. He is appropriately nerdy in that voice performance. I think it's very good. And Raphael, played by Justin Long. No, played by Alan Ritchson. The Turtles, they got their personalities right. Way back on episode 20, we talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And we talked about all the original trilogy altogether. But what I said about that movie is the most important thing in a Turtles adaptation is to get the personalities right. And I think they get them right. Raphael, he's a hothead. He's angry. He's always threatening to leave. And in this movie, he's mad and constantly threatens to leave.
Threatening to leave.
Spot on.
Yeah, Alan Ritchson I've seen him around for a long time because I actually remember him ages ago on Smallville where he played Aquaman. So this man is no stranger to his comic book stuff. He also started playing Hank Hall / Hawk in Titans for a few seasons. And just recently inherited the role of Jack Reacher from Tom Cruise. So quite they just did it's an upcoming show. It might not even be out yet. But one of the criticisms of Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher is that Jack Reacher is supposed to be a giant person.
Yes.
And of all the things that you would use to describe Tom Cruise, giant person is not one of them. So people were a little bit more enthusiastic about his casting because he's 6'2" and he's thick. So he plays Raphael very similarly, though. Which
Who I think is physically the biggest turtle. They're not all the same size.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
He towers over the other ones.
He's massive. And that's something that they do play a lot here. The turtles are very physically powerful in this movie, which is not typically how they're played. They're typically played a lot more as ninjas and using their abilities. In this one, Raphael will just straight up wreck you. He will just throw you around and just straight overpower you. But I do like what he's doing as Raphael here. It's like you said, I think this movie, if it does get one thing right, the Turtles dynamic is one of them. I think the personalities are all pretty good by and large, and he's no exception.
And lastly, we have Noel Fisher as Michelangelo, the party dude. And I said it already, they got the personalities right. He's totally got the surfer dialect down. Number of lines that made me laugh. I really like the cat playing chopsticks line that I used at the top of the episode. Dude sounds like Michelangelo.
Yeah, he's doing a great job as Michelangelo. He's got the voice, he's got the vibe. I've seen him in a couple of other things. He was in Shameless for a long time. He was on the Stephen King inspired series Castle Rock. So he's good. And in here, he's no exception. Like I said, he fits into the, it feels like Michelangelo. It sounds like Michelangelo.
And he walks like Michelangelo because he did the mocap too.
He walks. Yeah. God damn it. So no, but he does a great job here. What more is there to say? He fits.
Now, the casting that probably made the most headlines when this movie was in production is Megan Fox as April O'Neil, the reporter for Channel 6 News. And one thing I do like about this adaptation is it kind of blends different versions of April. In the comics, in the original, she is actually a scientist. And it's actually the cartoon that makes her a news reporter, and that becomes the most popular version. The yellow jumpsuited or yellow raincoat, as the case in the movies, news reporter. In most adaptations since then do that. And she's still a reporter here, but also her dad is a scientist and she grew up in a lab, so it kind of merges those two versions, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that is a nice little twist on the character.
Now, I think a lot of like I mentioned, this casting, drew a lot of headlines and criticism, mainly because the people that were complaining about this movie ruining their childhoods are probably the same people that didn't care much for the Transformers movies, which those were directed by Michael Bay and, of course, starred Megan Fox. So just the more association with that franchise kind of brought that stigma along with her. And I don't know. I don't think Megan Fox deserves any kind of hate like that. if you don't like the Transformers movies, it's probably not because of the performance of Megan Fox. It's not like she's out there bringing those movies down. And she's look, this is, of course, a hashtag positivity podcast. I'm also going to be honest with all of you. She's not like my favorite April O'Neil. She's not erasing all other versions or setting the bar, but she's fine. She's not bringing down the Transformers movies. She's not ruining the Ninja Turtles movies either.
No. You could, like I said, there's if we're going to start going after what's wrong with the Transformers movies, that list has a lot of things on it way before Megan Fox.
Now, Will Arnett is in this movie. He's the cameraman for April O'Neil, so they have a lot of scenes together. They're, of course, partners in their job, and then when April gets fired, he goes rogue with her to chase this story. I think it's pretty clear that he's put into this movie as the comic relief, or additional comic relief whenever Michelangelo's not around. And if you want to add comic relief to your movie, you could do a whole lot worse than Mr. Will Arnett.
Job himself.
Batman himself. Some say top 3
No one.
Batman?
Some say not the best Batman, but still pretty good.
Well, you can't give him the best voice of Batman because that's clearly Kevin Conroy, and he will never be topped. But second best voice of Batman, that's not a bad place to be.
No, certainly not, especially when you're up against somebody like Kevin Conroy. I'd put him above Peter Weller, that's for sure. How are you going to do Dark Knight Returns and not get Kevin Conroy for it? How are you going to do Dark Knight Returns and not get Kevin Conroy for it?
But they got him for The Killing Joke.
And Mark Hamill. I would have, if I was going to have him do one,
right,
I would have gone with Dark Knight Returns over Killing Joke every time. Folks, I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, he plays Vern Fenwick, who's a character that's from the 80s show. There's a lot of bits here from the cartoon that pop over the Channel 6. Vern Fenwick, a lot of those things were things that had been on the 87 show that weren't really worked into any of the films thus far. So some of that stuff got folded in here.
We're crediting the 80s show. Even the colors of the Ninja Turtles come from the 80s television show.
That is 100% correct. But that had been incorporated previously. But I don't think we'd ever seen Vern Fenwick in live action before this. So, like, he's clearly kind of got a thing for April, but she's not super interested in him. But, so yeah, he's just kind of playing Will Arnett. And when you cast Will Arnett, you're expecting a very specific thing, and he does that here.
I honestly don't know what his natural speaking voice sounds like. I mean, I guess it's just that, but it always sounds like he's putting on a voice. Like, it's just naturally got that rasp to it, and it always sounds like he's playing a character. He's the host of Lego Masters, which I'm not a big reality TV guy. I'm not a big game show guy. I love that show. It is very cool. Highly recommend going and checking out Lego Masters if you haven't already, but he's the host of it, and it always sounds like, again, he's playing a character. I can't imagine him like at home and making breakfast and using this voice while he talks to his family. Like, if I want to affect his kids, be like, Dad, stop, you're home.
Stop it.
Be normal.
There's also a scene in this movie where he makes what appears to be a mustard and Parmesan cheese sandwich. I was so confused.
You know what I find interesting about that, Andrew? The Turtles go crazy for this cheese pizza. Normally the Turtles love all kinds of weird stuff and weird toppings on their pizza. It's a running gag through a lot of the iterations. But in this one, they're like, wow, there's 5 different kinds of cheese. I'm like, that's as boring and plain as you get. But Will Arnett's over here, Parmesan and mustard. Yeah.
Excuse me, Chris. That was a 99 cheese pizza.
Cheese pizza is cheese pizza, bro. You're not exciting me no matter how many different varieties. It is the vanilla ice cream of pizza. It's a waste of a pie.
Vanilla is one of the rarest plants to find in the world, Chris.
That doesn't make it taste better.
Vanilla in my house. It's a delicious flavor. How dare it's not at all equatable to what's happening.
It is the canvas for superior toppings. You put caramel on vanilla or fudge, but just plain vanilla by itself, it's a waste of a dessert. That could have been strawberry.
You ever had creme brulee, Chris? You ever had creme brulee, Chris? That's vanilla.
Overrated. That's what I say.
Dare
Overrated.
You. Get out of here. The biggest offense here is that this 99 cheese pizza supposedly came from Pizza Hut, which I know is a lie.
Yeah, how much did they pay to get that product placement?
Here, this vanilla slander. I'm not going to stand for it. Ridiculous. Disgrace.
Pointless as a blimp.
No, you just...
No, they're better than blimps. You heard it here, folks.
You're right.
You heard it here first. Vanilla ice cream is better than a blimp. But that's a pretty low bar. Andrew, there's one last casting that I think we should go over talking about this movie. Whoopi Goldberg is here.
Yes.
Just like I was surprised about Johnny Knoxville being in this movie. About 20 minutes in, Whoopi Goldberg walks into my screen. Her character's name is Bernadette Thompson. She is April O'Neil's boss. I guess she kind of decides which stories make it to the newsroom, and April's trying to pitch the story about vigilantes, but she has no proof, and she kind of chastises and is a little bit abusive of a boss, in my opinion. So she's not here as any kind of comic relief or what you might expect a Whoopi Goldberg cameo or bit part to be. Pretty odd. That being said, her performance is good. She's good at playing that rude boss.
Whoopi Goldberg, yeah.
She's Whoopi Goldberg, sure. But
in a couple of the different versions since the cartoon in the 80s and on, April has had a news manager boss. His name is Bern Thompson. So I'm guessing this character is just riffing on that, Bernadette Thompson. Same idea. But yeah, she basically plays the news manager. She's the one that's deciding what goes on air, making sure everything is ready for the broadcast, all that. I used to do that. I know what it's like. But yeah, she's Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, there's not much else to say there.
Well, Andrew, let's jump into this movie. Let's talk about our favorite scenes and the best scenes of the movie, starting with our personal favorite. Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is the best scene in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I think my favorite scene watching it back, I really enjoy I don't exactly even know how to describe it, but it's basically this like downhill chase that's happening throughout the basically after the
avalanche action scene.
The avalanche action scene, I guess, yeah. Basically this is right after the Turtles have finally like escaped from Shredder. They know what Shredder and Sax are planning, and they are basically trying to get there to stop them, but on the way to stop them, they get kind of hijacked by Shredder's goons, including Karai. I actually think it's very cool that Karai is in this movie. Debuted during the City at War arc of the comics and had shown up in some of the cartoons, so seeing her here was cool. But
she would be the one with purple hair?
Yeah. Shredder's second in command, essentially. Also Shredder's daughter in a lot of things. But yeah, this scene is just really, really, I like it a lot because, so basically they've escaped and they're kind of trying to get to stop Shredder and Sax, and they end up in this avalanche. So they're going downhill. They're in an 18-wheeler. The Foot Clan with Karai are in all these different vehicles trying to stop them and kind of recapture them and stop them from interfering. But you just get a whole lot of the Turtles being the Turtles. Like you've got April and kind of Vern that are in the truck at the front. And really it's just the Turtles working together, kind of going with each other, trying to stop all of these guys and save each other in the process. And I think it's just a really, really effective action sequence. It's showcasing the Turtles kind of using their abilities and kind of using their weapons and everything like that. We're not really doing too much brute force. There's definitely some of that here, but you got everybody kind of using their weapons, using their gimmicks, using their kind of niche. It's a pretty fun effect. I like Donatello uses his retractable bow to like flip a car at one point.
Yeah,
which is
and he
awesome.
says, "I've always wanted to do this," and like specifically slide in an avalanche and flip a Humvee over with your bow staff.
Hey, it must get boring down in the sewers, man. But
he saw The Dark Knight and he saw Batman flip the 18-wheeler, and he's like,
yeah,
I want to flip a car.
I want to flip a car. He's like, and why wouldn't you? I had the exact same thought after watching that.
It's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, you get a really good dynamic between all the Turtles here. It's on full display. Like this was just a really fun scene. Like it snapped me back into the movie, and you're just having a lot of fun with it. I love that. You know, you're going along with it, but this like really kind of like I was like, oh, I'm like, it was definitely something that was visually appealing as well, and I just love the dynamic of the Turtles in the sequence too. I said that like the dynamic of the Turtles is one of the most important things that we've both said that's probably the most important thing of the Ninja Turtles is making sure they have that dynamic, and they have it here. And I like there's a sequence where it appears Leonardo and April and Vern have like fallen over this cliff and perished, and Michelangelo's having this mini meltdown, And Raphael like slides across the screen and goes, "They're not dead, numbnuts." And for some reason, that was immensely funny to me because he's literally saying it as he slides past him. And I was just like, "Yep, this is the Ninja Turtles. This is how they're supposed to be." And I thought it was really fun.
I agree 100%. That is also my favorite scene of the movie. I thought, the most fun. And to get more specific, I think it's a great showcase of this iteration of the Ninja Turtles. These turtles, compared to other movie adaptations or cartoons, are much more about the big, over-the-top action sequences. And, I mean, this doesn't get any more over-the-top than that. I mean, the appeal of this movie is very different than the appeal of the 90s movies. They have a different goal altogether. So, once you kind of wrap your head around not so much this being a different adaptation of the Turtles, but again, different goal. This movie is trying to dazzle you with the special effects, high octane, over the top action scenes, and this is as over the top as it gets. And again, a great showcase of this iteration of the Ninja Turtles. I like that they're sliding on their shells pretty much the entire time. Everybody else is in a Humvee. The humans are in Humvees and the van, and they are sliding the entire time. It's actually foreshadowed a little bit earlier in the movie, where you see they often dive down into the sewers and they slide through the sewers on their shell. They're doing the same thing here and using it to kick some butt, Andrew. A lot of good storytelling action beats. I like when Raphael asks for Donnie to swing him. He grabs onto his bow staff, and while they're both sliding, Donnie does like a 360 and whips Raphael across. Raphael is kind of down and out after a while. He gets some injuries, and him and Donnie are holed up in the back of a van. And Raphael's like, "Well, I gotta keep fighting. Just take me up. Take my shell up. Get me back out there." And Donnie, I think, says, like, "It's my turn to be the badass." And he jumps out of the van, and that's whenever he flips that car, and he's super proud of himself that he was able to do something that normally would be like a Raphael move. And again, it's that dynamic of the Ninja Turtles. Like, Raphael's the tough one. He just wants to get back out there, keep fighting through an injury. Donnie steps up, gets out of his comfort zone to do something. Like, it's great. And there's a lot of those. I really like the bit where when Raphael does jump back into the action, he like cannonballs out of the back of a van and goes to the windshield of one of the Humvees and then starts taking people out with his, ninja acumen. It's very cool.
Ninja acumen.
Yeah.
But no, I agreed 100%. Everything in this sequence is awesome. Everything is well done. Everything really, like you said, it showcases this version of the Ninja Turtles. And yeah, you just have a lot of fun.
And right before this action scene, kind of leading up to it, they're escaping from Shredder. And to do so, they are injected with adrenaline, like a lot of adrenaline, because they've had a bunch of their blood drained for the bad guys' evil plans. And they're like super hyper as if they had like a bunch of caffeine, and that's really fun. But they walk out of the facility and they get like shot up with machine guns, and Raphael, and he gets hit in his shell with bullets. He flexes and the bullets fly out of his shell. It's one of the most ridiculous over-the-top things I've seen in any Turtle adaptation. And again, that's what this version of the Turtles is about, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree. I think that you're playing with the over the top stuff, but this sequence when I like didn't even know where like Ref got like the bullets that he just flexes out, but he does that, and I was like, all right, I'm not even mad. Like, it's like when The Rock like flexes out of the cast in like Fast 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're just like, all right, okay, sure, this is what we're doing now.
I think the movie starts off pretty cool. I mean, the very, very opening of this movie, they're kind of giving you a little bit of history and background on the characters and the Ninja Turtles. And the opening credits are kind of like a motion comic. Remember when those were popular for a little while? Like, they made one for The Watchmen when the movie came out. It's the panels of the actual comic, but they move. Characters slide across the screen and things like that. Can't say I'm a huge fan of the actual motion comics, but as an introduction to a movie, I thought it was pretty cool. Kind of bridging that gap between all previous adaptations before you launch into this movie. And they tease the Ninja Turtles. You see them kind of like in low light. You just see their weapons and their fists flying around, and each turtle is lit with their appropriate color. Get you excited, man. I love the Ninja Turtles. That little tease in the beginning, I'm like, all right, Turtles movie, let's go.
I like that art style. It looks like it's very. I'm pretty sure I'm not sure if he actually did them, but definitely the art style of those credits feels to me like it's definitely trying to embody Kevin Eastman's art style, which is very unique. Nobody else out there draws like Kevin Eastman does, and it's
nice,
it's always
and
strange to me.
and good thick lines.
Blocky, the shading, the thick lines. I love it, but it's so strange to me when he draws he does variant covers sometimes, and it's like Batman and Superman, and I'm like, whoa, that doesn't look right at all. Like it's legitimately a style that's 100% suited to Ninja Turtles and almost nothing else. It's so iconically associated with, and I love it. I have a Raphael drawing by him, and it's one of my favorite things that I have. The only thing that would be cooler is if I was able to get a Donatello, but one day.
Just color it, Andrew. Just get a mark. Just get a purple marker.
He's got the size, man. It's not that simple. Trust me, if it was just a turtle, I'd say it was whoever I wanted it to be. But yeah, and I remember when Eastman came back to be involved in the IDW comics, I just thought that was so cool. And I know he came on board to help with this too. And, publicity stunt or not, it's always nice to see the creators involved. It's a cool bridge because, like you said, it doesn't define the movie. We've seen them try to incorporate that sort of stuff into the film at times, and it can always be kind of jarring. But for here, it's a good little, introduction to the turtles. And then, yeah, you get all the cool shots that are, hyping up the turtle. Yeah, man, it's Ninja Turtles. How can you go wrong?
Whenever April is pitching her story about the Ninja Turtles, there's one of her coworkers is really giving her a hard time. The guy's kind of a jerk. I wish we got to see him get his comeuppance later in the movie because he's just being so mean. But one of the things he says to her is, "O'Neill, I think you found Superman. That's cool." Just super sarcastically because he's talking about these vigilante heroes. Again, Andrew, how many times am I going to say it? Superman exists in this movie, in the Turtles universe. I assume he's a comic book in this movie. In this universe.
I assume, yeah.
But it's Superman, right? He's just part of America.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I went on a tirade about this already, but he's just an easily identifiable superhero thing. Although, if you were talking about vigilantes in the shadows fighting crime, you think there would have been a lot more direct of an analog that he would have used instead of Superman. I'm clearly talking about Moon Knight.
Yeah, the first thought comes to anyone's mind.
Yeah. But yeah, man, Superman is everywhere. He's an easy point of reference. I think that's why people just haphazardly reference Superman all the time.
Sure. Look, we talked about the Turtles' appearance here. They're very large, larger than they've ever been. That's cool with me. I really like all of their flair. I mean, in most adaptations, the colored bandana is about the only thing that differentiates them other than the weapons that they carry. But here, they sort of have makeshift armor made from trash, I guess. Things they find in the sewer. So they all look distinctive beyond just the colored bandana, which even those aren't all the same. Some are more a traditional bandana. Raphael's covers his whole head. It's kind of a throwback to the Next Mutation, the live-action TV show where they mixed up their bandanas in the same way. This movie's just got everything in it.
They also were wearing a little bit more elaborate flair in Next Mutation. So
yeah,
this thing is just homages to everything.
Speaking of flair, I really like Leonardo's NYC pin on his weapon strap. It's just very nice, always prominently featured next to him. New York City. I mean, that's a huge part of the Turtles. They're New York superheroes. Love their city. I like that stuff.
Yeah, it's you can't do the Ninja Turtles in Chicago. It just doesn't work.
They would complain about the pizza.
No, they wouldn't. You all forget that there's Chicago thin crust.
Yeah, I do. Is that really a thing? Is it Chicago? It's not just thin crust that you can buy in Chicago. There's a Chicago version of thin crust unique to Chicago.
I mean, I'm sure it's made other places, but yes, Chicago thin crust is a thing.
How angry would you have been if the Ninja Turtles got some Chicago pizza in this movie and they called it lasagna or cake or whatever thing people like? Would you have gone into a rage.
Chris, we wouldn't be recording this episode.
This movie
We
is
wouldn't have.
disqualified.
Chris, I can't speak about a movie this disrespectful.
Yeah, there really is, though. Tons of references to all different Turtles media.
Oh yeah.
The theme song is referenced multiple times. Will Arnett says, "Oh, heroes in a half shell." Which, Andrew, I'll be honest with you. I'm a 30-something-year-old man. That line has never made sense to me. How are turtles in a half shell? They have a shell on both sides of their body. It's an entire shell.
I'm guessing the idea is the truth here is we need to ask the writer of the theme song, who is actually the same guy who created The Big Bang Theory.
That's a fun piece of trivia.
Yeah, it is. And his name is escaping me right now, so I got to look it up because it's gonna make me mad.
Well, I'll keep complaining about this because, like, an oyster on a half shell, I understand that. You break it open, there's one shell that has the oyster on it. It's a half shell. I get it. Turtle in a half shell? I don't understand. They just
Chuck Lorre, that's his name.
I feel like they just needed like the syllables for the song. It's lazy songwriting, is what I'm saying. Chuck,
because like
I expect
heroes in
better
a
from
full
you.
shell just doesn't make sense.
Heroes in a turtle shell. Turtle power.
Turtle snow.
Doesn't make any sense.
Turtle shell is 2 syllables. We're trying to do 1 syllable here. No, don't get me wrong. All I can assume is that the image of a turtle shell creates like the back appears to be the shell. So I'm guessing it's the back half is a shell, the front half isn't, even though that's not accurate. Like, biologically,
Andrew, that is a Johann level stretch right there.
it is. Don't misunderstand me. But that's the only, because even as a kid, I assumed the shell was the back. Like it never, your brain doesn't tell you that the front is also part of the shell, even though it is.
It very clearly is. What are you talking? It's not. It's very clearly shell.
The back it looks different from the front. As a kid, I didn't realize they were the same thing.
Okay.
I understand that you own turtles, Chris, so this gives you an unfair advantage that I don't think you realize.
I do. Raphael, Rex, Daddy loves you. If you're listening.
If he's listening, it's because you put it on for him. So,
Which I often do. Just blast the speakers next to the aquarium. Andrew, tell me if you agree with this statement. Baby Ninja Turtles, always cute.
always cute.
In
They had to
here
start from somewhere.
we get. I almost said Teenage Turtles. The full ones are teenage, but we get like an in between state. We get, what are those? Toddler? No. Like 10-year-old turtles? I don't know what stage they are, but we get like baby turtles.
Children.
Pre-mutation turtles. We get baby turtles. Okay, children. Then we get child turtles before the eventual teenage. So we get a few different stages here, and all adorable. I love them.
All of them. Yeah, it's interesting because like they show them through there and they show them living in the sewer, so they're all wearing like very disheveled things, and you kind of feel bad more than once. Where it's like, yeah, but you can't exactly like stroll these guys up to the YMCA or like the Salvation Army and be like, hey, what do you got, guys? Like, it's not. Doesn't quite work, but
they can't find clothes that fit over their half shell.
Yeah, the half shell is just getting in the way. So
we talked about the turtles look in this movie. What about Master Shredder? Also, like I've never seen him before. He is
he is knives on top of knives on top of knives on top of knives.
Yeah, Edward Scissorhands, eat your heart out. He is almost like a cyborg. I mean, he's like a really old man who's, I don't know, he's been through some stuff. He's looking rough. But whenever he's in his armor, he's flipping and jumping and like a like a young ninja. But I don't know if there's some kind of robotics going on in there. I really like I said, you got tons of blades. They're like, he can like recall them. He'll shoot them out, and then they zip them back to his arm. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, it's like a weird he like shoots them and then they like magnetically come back and like seat back into all of his armor. I remember there was that scene in the trailer where he's fighting, or that scene where he's fighting Splinter and he like flicks his wrists and like all of his knives expand. That was in the trailer, and it was one of the more heavily memed moments. People like kept just photoshopping it so it was more and more knives just to give it more.
It's like the traitor stormtrooper from The Force Awakens.
Right, just like there's something more and more and more every time. And it's certainly a look. I mean, don't get me wrong. If the implication here is that he is old enough to be William Fichtner's father, then I kind of get why he's got a giant mech shredder suit, because that dude's not young, is all I'm saying. But yeah, it's certainly a look. You only see Shredder outside of the suit a couple of times, and then the rest of the movie he's just, he's full Shredder mode. And yeah, he don't mess around though. This dude stomps most all of them pretty heavily until they finally team up and stop him. But he has a pretty good fight with Splinter. And then he cracks Raph's shell, which is pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's a really cool fight though. Raphael versus Shredder 101 is probably my favorite fight in this movie. Most of the action is, like we were talking about earlier, really over the top set pieces. Even though they're Ninja Turtles, there's not a lot of ninja fighting in this movie. But Raphael versus Shredder was definitely a standout.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. The other turtles at this point are imprisoned and they're getting their blood drained. That's what happens in this movie. But so Vern and April are trying to free the turtles while Raphael is fighting Shredder to kind of distract them. And yeah, it is a brutal fight. Shredder is not giving him an inch, and at one point looks like he's legit about to crush him, and ends up cracking his shell, giving us our aforementioned later moment where he tells Donnie to tape it up. But yeah, that is definitely probably, it's not very long, but it's effective.
I mentioned that I haven't heard really a lot of positive things about this movie, almost at all. Not just before it came out, but after and the year since. I just don't hear people speak very highly about it, except for one scene that I have heard highlighted by a number of people as being the highlight of this movie and one of their favorite scenes. Andrew, do you know what scene I'm talking about?
I believe you're talking about the elevator scene, Chris.
Yes, and
which is all of about 45 seconds.
Well, I've got to agree with everybody. It is really good. It's strange because it kind of stops the pacing of the movie. It's leading up to the big final fight with Shredder on the roof, and we just get to see their entire elevator ride. The turtles are just sitting on an elevator. Most movies, the usual gag here is that boring elevator music plays, right? The turtles have all their weapons, they're about to fight, and they've got to stand there and listen to this music. That's the standard joke. They take it one step farther because the turtles, to kill the time, start beatboxing. And it's so fun. They start tapping their weapons together to make music. I love it.
And I remember even watching it. I was like, well, this is really fun. This is they're standing there and it's all silent, and they're all kind of Raphael and Leo are looking grizzled and hyped, and Donnie's standing in the back looking and then it's obviously Michelangelo breaks the ice, starts tapping his nunchucks together, going back and forth, and then Raph starts doing his size together, and everybody starts, and I'm just this is fun because you think about even I would imagine if me and my brother were in an elevator we'd possibly do something dumb like that. We'd be well, this is boring as hell. Why don't we just kill the time by doing something dumb? And it was it feels strange to call it a scene to me. I guess it technically is by definition, but it's legit 30 seconds, but it's another moment where you're just this is the Ninja Turtles.
It's everything great about the Ninja Turtles. You got their personalities, the fact that they are teenagers, the fact that they are brothers. It's all expressed by them just chilling and beatboxing and making music. It's awesome.
MC Mikey. MC Ricky.
I mean, the movie knows how great it is. In the special features of this movie, there's an extended version of the elevator scene. You can watch a longer version of it. It is propped up by this movie, and rightfully so. It is a super fun beat right before you get to the final fight in this movie, which is versus Shredder on a roof. Possibly a callback to that first movie.
Except this one's in the daytime, which was always strange to me.
I like that though. We see a lot of
Yeah.
action scenes at night,
At
and
night.
it's usually to kind of hide some CG. I always praise that about the first Avengers movie. Like that big final fight takes place in broad daylight. You just don't
Yep.
see that.
Love it.
Same thing here. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it a lot. No, I definitely like that. The turtles also attack as a group to start with, which I was like, good. You learned your lesson from the last movie where you tried to take on Shredder individually and it didn't
Yeah.
work. They still struggle, but it's I always like seeing it when they change things up a bit. It's like Guillermo del Toro's movies where everything's raining all the time.
Yeah, they learn to work together. They call back to a previous exercise that they did where they all bend over. Raphael runs across their shells. They turn it into a big kick at Shredder, and it's their first big blow to the villain. And it's super fun. I guess it's the turtles working together fighting Shredder. Like, I'm in. I think they nailed this fight. You see Shredder on full display with those retractable, recallable blades that we talked about. They even throw in some good cowabungas there, which
Yep.
I didn't even notice that they hadn't said it the entire movie. And Raphael is like, Michelangelo, you know that word I told you never to say again? He lets out a perfect cowabunga to start off the fight. And then after Shredder's thrown off the roof, we get another cowabunga from Raphael. Good use of cowabunga.
Awesome. Like, but yeah, what more can you ask for?
It was pointed out to me fairly recently by host of another podcast, one of my favorites, Level Zero podcast, Greg. We happened to be talking about this movie and The Amazing Spider-Man, and he pointed out to me that they have the same climax, and now I can't unsee that. It's on a roof, the villain's trying to disperse a poison to the whole city, and the needle on top of the roof gets knocked over. Amazing Spider-Man did it first, so I'm not pointing fingers, but we'll call it a coincidence.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, and now I can't unsee it. Where's that crossover?
Whenever that needle,
give me the Spider-Man cut.
when, whenever that needle does fall over, we get a last final fun action set piece. Everybody's hanging on for dear life, including Shredder. He gets knocked off, falls to his doom. But the beat I really like here is whenever the turtles are falling, they're all holding on to this structure as it falls. They all think that they might possibly die and start yelling out confessions. Another great, perfect, on-brand Turtles moment. Michelangelo admits that he didn't understand the ending of Lost. Donatello admits that he licked the icing off of Pop-Tarts and puts them back in the box. And then Raphael has a genuinely great moment. It's funny like those, but he's pouring his heart out, telling him that I don't tell you guys this, but I love you. When I walk away, it's actually because I'm scared I'm going to let you down. And it's just a great moment for the character who typically hides and buries all of his emotions, and he's letting it out because he thinks he might die. And by the time he's done spilling his guts, he opens his eyes and realizes they're fully safe on the ground. So it's a good comedic beat, but also a genuinely good character moment.
Yeah, it's actually, like you said, it's unironically a great moment where he kind of opens up and kind of admits that it's kind of an act a little bit, that he's kind of the tough guy just because he has his own fears that he doesn't want to really address. And yeah, it's genuinely great. And it was another moment where I was like, this is great. This is fantastic.
You know, as many design choices as we're talking about are not so much a departure for the characters, but certainly a new take and something we haven't seen before, like the large turtles or Shredder with all of his knives. We do get a tease of a turtle van at the end of this movie that looks very cool. It looks right off the page, right off the comic book, very colorful, very fun, very Turtles. I have not seen the second movie yet, but there will be a Best of the Rest episode about it, so we will be talking about it. I hope that van is all over that movie because I'm hyped to see more of it.
I absolutely hope so. I actually don't remember if it is or not, so you and I will experience that together.
There's not a post-credit scene, but there's like a quick mid-credit scene that is really funny. There, it just shows like a shot of New York City. There's a big billboard for Victoria's Secret, a woman wearing a bra, and then it's a close-up to two of the turtles talking to each other. And then we go back to the street view, and we realize that the turtles are hiding in front of the bra. Their back of the shell is black to blend in with a bra, and then they move on to their next hiding spot. It's very fun visual.
Very fun, yeah.
And fun is a word that I keep coming back to. There's a lot of fun beats, fun moments in this movie, and I think it's what they're going for. I think it was the goal of this version of the Turtles, just to be, again, over the top action and fun. Just fun beats, fun moments that make you smile with how over the top or sometimes goofy it is, but fun nonetheless. I think that's kind of the name of the game for this adaptation. Now, Andrew, in your opinion, we ask you this every episode. How do you think this movie functions as an adaptation of these characters? Obviously, the storyline isn't direct from any one comic or story that came before it, but capturing the essence of the Ninja Turtles for a new generation. You think they're succeeding here?
I mean, you and I kind of discussed this already, where we kind of brought up the dynamic of the Turtles, I think, is the most important part. And I think this movie generally gets that down pretty well. The personalities are all there. They're all distinct. Everybody's kind of in their specific wheelhouse, doing the thing that they're kind of known for. Obviously, if you're looking for a straight adaptation of the Mirage comics, you're never going to get that. Like, I'm not trying to be negative, but like the Ninja Turtles is grown into this thing now where just the idea of doing that, the closest you're ever going to get is Turtles Forever, where they kind of genuinely just appear as the actual Mirage comics briefly.
Turtles multiverse movie before the multiverse craze.
Before that was ever a thing, folks. Turtles Forever. Also, like, unironically, really like Turtles Forever, so I highly recommend checking it out. But it's the only shot against it is they don't have the actual 80s voice actors in it. The only problem. Otherwise, it's really, really great. But like, I think overall, I think it succeeds mostly in like what it's trying to do, which is to bring the Turtles into like the kind of a new setting and kind of establish the characters for a new audience. I mean, at this point, I think everybody kind of knows who they are, but you're just trying to build new, big, bombastic, big screen adventures. And I think in that regard, the movie succeeds. If you're looking for a straight adaptation of, like I said, City at War or something, or even City Fall or stuff like that, it's not going to happen here. This is a different version, but every version of the Turtles is kind of different. Every version kind of takes the stuff they like from before. Like, the original comic is obviously very much meant to be like almost kind of a joke on like the dark and gritty comics of it's meant to be kind of a parody of it with how like needlessly dark it is. Whereas the 80s cartoon is very much like, let's just take this concept and just straight up make it for kids.
Yeah, sugary cereal Saturday morning cartoon.
Action figures, the whole nine. And then the 90s movies were kind of a blend of that. Like, hey, let's find a balance where like we're kind of doing the dark thing from the comics, but we're still kind of aiming it more for kids just in case. And the later movies kind of followed that model. And then we eventually get the 2003 show that kind of follows that TMNT 90 void of like, here's the colorful stuff but we're going to darken the setting just a little bit and kind of take it at that approach. And every single show kind of ebbs and flows and leans more heavily into the kids stuff here. Hey, maybe this one's a little bit darker. So with this one, we're kind of, like we said, we're pulling from a lot of different sources to create something different. And is it what you remember the Ninja Turtles as? Probably not. But that doesn't mean it can't be a good time.
That's going to do it for us for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles talk, at least for the 2014 movie. I mentioned earlier there will be a future episode about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, the 2016 sequel to this movie. So if you have your positive thoughts on that movie, let us know. And whenever we cover it, we will read it on the episode. Shoot us an email, bestofthebrestpod@gmail.com, or join our Discord. There is a link in the show notes, and you can leave your thoughts there for us to read on that episode. It's amazing, Andrew, just how adaptable the Turtles are. I mean, those original comics, the 80s show, the movies, the many different series, they're pretty different in a lot of ways if you really want to dig into it. But the core, as we keep saying, the Turtles' personality, their dynamics, the fact that they're brothers, I mean, that's what is kind of true through all of them. Otherwise, you can get pretty crazy with the different looks and appearances and costumes and villains and how cosmic and weird you want to get with it. I mean, there's just so many different ways to take it, and it mostly works like every time. At the end of the day, these movies, or I can't speak of the sequel, but this one in particular is just, it's a different take, and honestly, it's not for me. And I don't mean like that's my opinion, like I just don't like it. I mean, like when they made this movie, they weren't marketing it towards me.
No.
I have a younger brother who would have been 9 or 10 when this movie came out. He really likes the Ninja Turtles now, and it's because of these movies. Like this was his window into the world. I watched this movie with my daughter. She's 11, friend of the show, my daughter, excuse me. And she really enjoyed it. The credits rolled, and she was like, yeah, that was a fun time. I liked it. You'll be happy to know her favorite Ninja Turtle before the movie was Michelangelo. But after this movie, she said it switched to Donatello. He won her over in this movie. So another one in Team Purple over there.
That's right.
but she knows who the Ninja Turtles are because they're in pop culture. She did see those 90s movies, but only because of our podcast, and she watched them with me when I was preparing for episode 20. But otherwise, this is kind of an introduction for her to like a modern version of the Ninja Turtles. And I'm not telling anybody what their opinion needs to be, of course, but I can understand to a degree, maybe having grievances with some of the changes made here, but on the same token, every adaptation is making their own changes. It's not just this movie. So whether it's the 80s cartoon or the multiple Nickelodeon reboots, you've got different looks for the villains every time. You've got slightly different personalities sometimes. I mean, there's always changes that are being made.
Always, and that was essentially my point earlier, is that like every version kind of gives and takes. Every version kind of sometimes builds on what came before, and actually one of the things that's, I think, interesting about, we mentioned Turtles Forever, is that you can see the differences like in real time, because everybody in that show is written pretty accurately to how they were in their chosen form. And your three big teams in that movie are the 2003 team, the 87 team, and the Mirage team. And you see how different they are. Like, you can see how the 87 team is kind of this fairly comedic, almost slapsticky group. Whereas the 2003 team is a little bit more grounded, but still has some of that a little bit over the top. Whereas the Mirage team is like super dark and super serious. And they make jokes about it because they're all different, but they're all still the Ninja Turtles at the end of the day. And I think that is the true lesson we can take.
Yeah, you said something to me recently that really stuck out because, given our ages, the 80s cartoon is our introduction to the Turtles. Something that we associate with childhood and we love. And then, of course, the movie adaptations that came as well. But we were talking recently because that 80s cartoon went on sale. The digital versions of it was $5 per season. And I was like, hey, you gonna pick these up? I'm thinking about it. And he told me, you're like, Chris, I don't know if I want to go back and watch those because I loved them as a kid. They're great in my mind. And I'm kind of scared that if I go back and look at them, I might start to see them in a new light. And I think that is a great lesson we learned when we look at a movie like this. And we watch it and maybe we're like, oh, this isn't as good. What we consider good, we loved it when we were a kid. And yeah, I still unironically love the 1990 original movie.
Right, of
but
course.
I can't separate the nostalgia from it. I can't ignore the fact that I literally grew up watching that movie. And I am sure my dad probably got sick of me having it on the TV all the time. And he does not feel as strongly about how good that movie is as I do. And now, we're that dad age and stuff isn't always geared towards us, and that's okay. If you love the Ninja Turtles, it's actually a good thing that the franchise is gaining fans.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, like, and even now, even with this movie and with the other things that exist, I think there's still, like, if what you want is something more akin to the 90s movie, I'd highly recommend checking out the IDW comics run, where I think I think it's still going on. I don't know, but I know it's been running for like almost 10 years now, which is insane to think about, if not longer. But there's still so many things out there as far as Ninja Turtles goes for you to see, for you to indulge. Like, even if you've never gone back and reread the Mirage comics, it's actually easier than ever to read old TMNT comics. For a long time, it was very difficult to do that. Unless you were finding like old trades or old reprints, because TMNT comes from a time where like reprinting things in trades wasn't really a thing. And then
Especially
for
how
time,
tiny that company is.
right. Mirage was not a huge company. They would occasionally do like a big book that had some stuff in it, but it was very difficult for a really long time to read those books. And then I think when Nickelodeon bought it out and licensed it to IDW, they did these beautiful hardcovers of that entire run. But they've now done that in a bunch of digestible forms so that you can go back and reread that original run. You can go back and reread the subsequent runs. You've even got the run that Peter Laird did himself after Kevin Eastman left that went for a long time. And even now, like I said, the IDW comics have been running for like a decade now. So like you've got 10 plus years of stories in there. That's all very much in the vein of maybe that 90s movie, if that's what you're looking for. And even now, we are awaiting the last issue of TMNT, The Last Ronin, which was like this unused Eastman Laird concept from their original runs that they never went back and did. And so now they finally have. And the last issue is going to be coming out next month, the month after. And then they'll put out a nice collection of that. And if you're looking for something that's different or something that's a little more on the serious side, I would highly recommend checking that out too. So there's never been a better time to be a TMNT fan because it's so easy to find that material now, which, trust me, when I was growing up and trying to find that old material, it was not.
Bring on the adaptations. And remember that maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch of Depressed to Impress for the music. Check him out on YouTube and Twitch.tv. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It is the only way we're going to grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you. And Raphael, played by Alan Ritchson. Why am I having a hard time saying this? Ritchson.
Richson. I
feel like it should be Richardson. It's just Rich. It's just taking a syllable. Richson. Apologies, Alan. I'm stumbling over your name, but
Fitchner Richson.
Well, Al here does a great job voicing Raphael, in my opinion. Megan Fox playing April O'Neil, the iconic April O'Neil, everybody's favorite character in the franchise, April O'Neil.
What?
Yeah, I thought. I'll cut that out. I just think it's funny that people were like, "How dare you? That's April."
Oh no, that's okay. All right, all right. I smell what you're stepping in. Good job. That's Taron Killam, I think, playing that guy, and he looks like a douche. So,
okay. Do you want that in the episode?
No, you don't need to do that.